Roper boots are a unique style of cowboy boot that has an interesting history and could be considered the gateway drug to a full-on cowboy boot for some wearers. So today, let's talk about roper boots, their history, their fit, and their qualities. Let's get into it.
I'm just here to connect ya, and then I'll be on my way.
Roper boots came to be in the early 1950s, at least in the Western wear world, and they were reportedly first made by Justin Boots. So the story goes that they were specifically made for calf roping or tie-down roping, which looks like this. So these boots, these roper boots, were made for calf ropers, tie-down ropers in rodeo competitions. The problem was that back in the 1950s or earlier, calf ropers in rodeos wore baseball caps and tennis shoes. Could you believe it? Oh, blasphemy. So the baseball cap, it didn't get in the way of the rope, and the tennis shoes would help them jump off the horse and run fast to the calf. But the Rodeo Cowboy Association had a fit over this. It was ruining the entire rodeo brand. So they made it a rule to require specific attire for rodeo contestants. Now this put the calf ropers into a tough spot because they didn't want to wear a regular cowboy boot with a big heel and a pointed toe, right? This slowed them down. They wanted something like a tennis shoe that they were able to run quick to the calf and tie it up. So folks went to John Justin Jr. of Justin Boots and asked him about making a boot with a shorter heel that would allow them to move quickly like they would be able to do in tennis shoes. So Justin found an old last, which is what they use to make the cowboy boot that gives it the foot shape. They found an old last of boots that they made for ROTC folks and also square dancers, and they based that and made the roper boot. So those other boots they made in the 1930s, and it had a round toe, shorter heel, and it then became what we now know as the roper boot. So the short heel allowed for calf ropers to run fast, and the wider round toe, created more surface area on the arena floor, since narrower toe shapes like this would sometimes sink into the dirt and they'd get caught up. And this would later be even more perfected with the wide square toe double stitch welt. A lot of cowboys say that this gives them a snowshoe effect on the arena floor, which is why this became really popular after the roper. But the roper was super popular in the 70s and the 80s. But many other people also refer to the roper as a Wellington boot, right? Some say it has its roots in England after the first Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wesley, had his Hessian boots altered to have a shorter top, a shorter heel in the late 1700s and 1800s, but Justin Boots was one of the first to make it a thing in the U.S. rodeo circuit. So, now that we know the history, let's get down and dirty with the qualities of a roper if you didn't catch it in that history segment. So the qualities of a roper are a shorter heel. It's got to be 1 inch to maybe 1.5 inches, but it does have like this block shape, right? And we can see on this Ariat roper here, this has a little bit taller of a heel, maybe around 1.5 inches when compared to the original Justin roper, which is what this is. This is a 1 inch heel, right? So you have to have a shorter heel on a roper boot. They also usually are shorter tops too, around, 8 to 10 inches tall. So this one's about 10 inches, but they do come in shorter too, like this Chisos boot. This one's 8 inches. And also a standard quality of a classic roper boot is a round toe. Although I've heard arguments that because a lot of square toe boots have a shorter heel, and a lot of them also do have shorter tops, not this one in particular, but just have the square toe. People could argue that the modern wide square toe double stitch well is Roper-esque, but if you look at this is the Roper boot, really. I think a Roper boot needs to have a round toe, but people have argued that the wide square toe double stitch well is kind of a Roper style. So those are the 3 things that you need to have a Roper boot: a short heel, round toe, short top. So with those qualities, you can make a Roper boot with any kind of leather, right? You can make them with ostrich leather. You can make it with alligator. You can make it with anything, and even the tops too. So this Chisos King Roper is what its name is, has a smooth ostrich top. So this is all ostrich on the foot. It does have just the regular leather outsole and leather stacked heel, cowhide leather, but the rest of the boot is all ostrich on the outside. So you can make a Roper boot with everything, all kinds of leathers. But there are several Roper boot misconceptions, and I want to cover those now. So a lot of people I've seen online, or a few people, probably just a few, say Ropers need to have rubber soles. Obviously, that's not the case. This is a Roper boot, and it has a leather outsole. But you could have a Roper with a rubber outsole, like this Ariat Heritage Roper. Classic Roper boot, and also rubber outsole. You can see short heel, short top, round toe. Very simple looking, right? So Roper boot. They can have a rubber outsole or a leather outsole. Doesn't really matter. And it doesn't really matter if they're Goodyear welted either. This one doesn't have a Goodyear welt. This one does. So this one can be resold, this original Justin Roper. The Ariat Heritage Roper, not so much. It would be very difficult to do this, since it does have a plastic welt on there. And it's made a little bit different with a molded heel on there, but it's still a Roper at the end of the day. The other thing is, like I mentioned, it's kind of simple, right? But a Roper doesn't have to be simple. A Roper doesn't have to have no toe bug or bug and wrinkle or no top stitching. Like, this is a very simple boot, right? Well, Ropers can have more design to them, like this one from Blackjack. As you can see, this one does have a bug and wrinkle on there, right, on the toe shape, and it also has top stitching and cording. So here we don't have a bug and wrinkle on the toe. We don't have a lot of top stitching at all, except around the crown of the boot. So these are both Ropers. So a Roper can be a little bit more design, Western style, with the bug and wrinkle and the top stitching, cording, inlay, whatever you want in the top. So those are some misconceptions. Also, a misconception is because of the shorter heel, Ropers are automatically more comfortable, which I have found not to be really the case. It depends on who you are, just like everything else. People will say, oh, it's got a shorter heel, so it's going to be more comfortable than the classic cowboy boot with the taller, more angled heel. I would say it depends on what you're looking for, right? You could potentially feel more comfortable in a boot like this and even feel better walking. For example, some Roper boots are kind of clunky, right? Especially ones that have a higher heel, like this one in particular, this Ariat. I feel like when boots have heels like this, the Stockman heel or a Roper heel, you kind of slap down when you're walking. It's kind of awkward where the heel hits, and then it just feels very unnatural, very aggressive when you're walking. But when you have a angled heel like this, when you're walking, it's just very natural and smooth because it's angled and just sort of hits the ground better than what you would if you just kind of hit the ground flat on something that doesn't feel much more natural. So it kind of feels like a blocky sensation sometimes, depending on the type of heel and depending on the kind of boot, Roper boot that it is. So that's another misconception. It's not always more comfortable because, as we'll get into right now, the fit is different too. Like, I've found that the Roper boot has less arch support. So we're talking about roper fit now. Maybe a little bit lower instep because you don't have the heel to help push that instep up. So if you have high insteps, it might be kind of hard to get into a roper boot. And I've also found that I have less arch support, even on my proper size, in a roper boot than what I have in a classic cowboy boot. So if you find that you have a high arch, a high instep, maybe the roper boot isn't going to be right for you, and you might want to just start off with a regular classic cowboy boot with a taller heel, 1.5 heel to 1 3/4 or whatever. And because it does have that higher heel, the instep is a little bit more inclined. So you have a much easier access. So you can see how sharp this is, right? You can see how sharp, it's almost like a 90-degree angle because the heel is so low. But because you have a high heel here, a higher heel, not high, but just relatively higher from the roper, that brings the foot up, and then you have an easier way to get in here into the boot if you have a higher instep. So it's not necessarily always the case where a roper boot is going to be more comfortable, but it might be more comfortable depending on, you know, what your foot is like. But that's not necessarily always the case. So that is a misconception, and we also covered roper fit in there. So this was a pretty safe introduction to many folks who are interested in cowboy boots, since many ropers kind of look plain like this with a lower heel. It doesn't attract too much attention, right? So if you're interested in getting into cowboy boots, you could potentially start out with ropers. It could be the gateway drug, right? And then maybe you would want to go with something that gets a little bit more attention if you're not using it for its designed purpose, and you're just using it as a sort of fashion statement. I would say that this doesn't state very much. It's not a super huge fashion statement like the traditional cowboy boot is, but if you like them for what they are, that's awesome. I think it's an awesome boot. It's a great style. It has a really cool history. So either way, if you're interested in ropers or you're interested in cowboy boots, it's definitely worth considering as your first boot or your sixth boot. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Simple and stoic, and oh how historic, roper boots are made for you. Find your style, you can wear it for miles, and get new soles when you wear them through. Yeah, roper boots, doing that roper boot 101. Lots of fun history with that too.